In this video, we are going to create from scratch a basic, simple start menu. We're going to set up the UI and then hook it up to the player. Let's get started. You'll notice we have a simple blank folder here. Now I'm going to create a new level. Let's do new level and a default. And we're going to save this. And we're going to save this out as our game map. So this is the map that you've been working on. You've created your game. We'll add a few cubes here. You know, we've got an awesome little game set up. And now we want to make a start menu. We don't want the player to just, boom, go right into here. So what we're going to want to do is create a simple start menu. And we're going to start off by making a new level. Now we'll call this one the main menu map. And you can create it however you want. But if you do new level, for example, when it creates it empty. And since this is just going to hold our user interface, empty is fine. We're going to need widget blueprints. Widget blueprints are what we use in order to interact and have user interface elements. So we could do new user interface widget blueprint. We'll name this whatever we want. I'm going to name this widget blueprint main menu. We'll go ahead and open it up. This gives us our UMG for creating our interface. By default, it comes with a canvas panel. This basically says this is your screen, and it gives you exact positioning. And for our purposes, it's going to work well. Our start menu is going to be pretty simple. We'll have a quit button. We'll have a settings button that isn't really going to do anything. And then we're going to have a start button that loads up your map or your game. And maybe we'll have a little title. So let's do that. We'll do this really simply. We'll slap in some text. This is going to be our game title. So we're going to call it Awesome Game. Let's, well, we want to make sure it's always near the top. So we're going to use the anchors to the top. We're going to change our position back to 0 and 0. We're going to set our alignment to the middle like this. So that way, basically, wherever we tell it to go is where it's going to go on the screen. And we're going to tell it to go down about 150. And if we actually do it in the correct one on the Y, it'll go down 150. Now our awesome game doesn't fit, so let's size this to content and let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's try like 72. Now in your proper game, you could replace this with an image. It doesn't really matter. These same settings will apply whether this is to an image or this is to text. We'll go ahead and we have our awesome game. We're going to make sure it's set, again, size to content and name it. And let's give it a little bit of flair and we'll make it light. Just give it a little bit of a different look. Now we need a menu. Our menu, again, is going to have 3 buttons, I think we determined. So we could drag in all of our buttons. And then we could try to set them up as best as possible to keep them organized. Or we could put them in a alignment box. We go to Panel, Vertical Box. We can now drop a vertical box in here and everything in the vertical box will be stacked on top of each other, kind of like Legos. Now all we have to worry about is setting up our vertical box to be wherever we want. This is going to be pretty simple. We're going to anchor it to the middle. Again, alignment 0.5, 0.5, so it centers it. You'll notice, of course, it's not centered because we have an offset. We'll go and reset our offset. And you'll notice our box is now in the middle. We're going to go ahead and tell it to size to content, which basically means that it'll disappear. There's no content. But then we'll drag in a few buttons. So we'll grab a button, and what do you know? Another button. So now we have 3 buttons there in the middle, all centered up, all nice and happy on top of each other. Now they are all stacked on top of each other, so I'm going to give them a little bit of room. So we'll grab all of our buttons. We can do it one at a time, or hold down Shift and grab them all. We're going to give them some padding. Let's just go with like 35 all around, because why not? We can adjust that later. And that'll give us 35 pixels all the way around for each button. We don't know what they do yet. Let's give them some text. So we could drag text onto the blocks or onto them in our hierarchy. And now we have text. Let's go ahead and grab each text block. Let's style them a little bit. We'll give them a little bit bigger. We're going to make them black, so they stand out a little bit better. And I'm going to make them light again, just to give it a little bit. And you know what? I'm going to keep them bold. Bold works better. Now, I don't like how close these are to the edges, so we're going to give them a little bit of padding. We're going to give them a little bit of margin all around. So let's make this 20 to start with. And I want my blocks to be longer. So I'm going to open up the margin and give it a left and right of 40. So my left of 40 and my right of 40 gives me a little bit more space on each side. Boom. Okay. We've got something. They don't do anything yet, but hey, it's better than nothing. We'll grab each text block and we're going to rename each one. So our first one's going to be play. Our next one's going to be settings. And you know what? We'll just do about. We'll call it about, and I'll show you how to do a little about pop-up. And then we'll do this one as quit. And there we go. Now we have play, about, and quit, and we have some easy buttons set up. And our game menu is almost done, to be honest. We just don't have it doing anything, but it works. Now, before we make it do anything, let's actually make sure everything we've done can be viewed by the player. There's two things that are important here. One, making sure that our player sees this when the game first starts. And two, making sure that it actually loads up when the player first starts the game. First thing's more important. Let's make sure our main menu map is the one that's loaded every time our player starts our game. We go into our edit, project settings. We'll find the maps and modes, and this is where you set your default maps for the project. We want our game default map to be our main menu map. So now whenever we start the game, like after we build it and we give it to someone, it's going to default to our main menu map. We'll go ahead and close this out, and we'll go ahead and now make sure that our main menu starts up. Now the one thing that is persistent in every level is the level blueprint. That's what is created when the level starts up, and it's the easiest way to get a user interface on the screen if it's for a menu and you don't really have anything else in the game. So we'll go ahead and go into blueprints, open level blueprint, make sure we are in our main menu map, and we're going to go ahead and tell this to display our user interface. This is pretty simple. We need to create the widget. That's our widget blueprint. Now we called this widget blueprint main menu, so we'll go ahead and just type in main menu, and there we go, widget blueprint main menu. Now this is going to create our main menu widget. After it's created, we need to actually be able to see it. So we're going to add, by dragging off of the return value, we're going to add to viewport. Player screen is useful for local multiplayer. Viewport is just the viewport you're using. So add to viewport is what you can use most of the time, unless you need a user interface on a specific screen for local multiplayer. Then it's add to player. So again, create, add to viewport. Now if we were to run this, we have our interface. We can click on stuff, we can do things, but you'll find if we click in the background, our mouse disappears. Well, it also is a giant pain in the butt to get out. If that happens, you have to hit escape or maybe even Alt F4 if you're in your built version. The reason for that is the default input mode when you're playing is game. That means your game accepts all your input. And when you click in the background on where it's no interface, it's going to go ahead and eat all the input. So we need to fix it. And it's really simple. We'll get our player controller. This will get the controller that the player's using. It's the player controller. All the input basically goes through here, including mouse input. And if we do set input, we'll find a few options. Game only, which is our default. Game and UI, or UI only. Since this is a main menu, we only care about getting UI only. So if we do this and hook it up, now when we run this, we're going to go ahead and all the input goes to the user interface. But we have another problem. We don't actually have our cursor being displayed properly. It's not being displayed properly because technically when the game starts up, this cursor isn't part of the game, it's outside the game. And when we click in the game, it eats our cursor because we've told it to do that by default. Really simple to fix. Get our player controller. We will set show mouse cursor, and we will tell it to show the mouse cursor. We'll go ahead and hook that up, and we'll run it again. Now when I click on the background, well, there we go. Our user interface is taking all of our input. Our buttons react to clicking. You can see them reacting when we hover. And then we're not losing our mouse anymore. We can even close the game. Okay, this right here sets up your user interface for when you want like a menu and things like that, and you don't want your game to actually, your player to do anything. We'll go ahead and close out our level blueprint. We'll go back in here and we'll hook up our buttons. Now we have 3 buttons but if you look at them, they're called button, button, and button. And if we look over here under the details panel, we have button 324, button 325, and button 326. And it's a little bit hard to remember. Let's just rename them. These are our names that we're going to use internally to refer to them later. So this one is our play button. And we'll go with the other one. We'll call this our about button. And we'll go ahead and go to this one, and we'll call this our quit button. Okay, simple enough. Let's go into our graph. We are going to now hook up our events. These are really super simple. Buttons have events called click events when you click on them or touch them in the case of using mobile, and stuff happens. So we'll go with our quit button first because this one's the easiest. Click on the quit button, find your details panel wherever it is. We have an on clicked event. We'll add to that. It's now going to say, okay, when we click on the quit button, what do we want to happen? And let me find where I did with that. Oh, there we go. On clicked. What are we going to happen? And this is really simple. There is a quit game node. Boom. We click the quit button. It's going to quit the game. We'll hit play. We'll test it. It works. Well, that wasn't hard. Surely the rest of this was going to be hard. Well, we'll grab the play button, hit on clicked. What happens when we click play? Well, we need to open up the map or the level that has your game. So open level, and then all we need to do is type in the name of the level that we want to load up. In this case, we call that our game map. So I'm going to copy the name of the game map, paste it into here, make sure it's spelled properly, save it, and play. Hit play, and our game map loads up. Now we do have an issue right now, and I'll show you how to fix that shortly, but the game map loaded up, and that's what counts. Let's go ahead and quit out of here. Remember, if you have an issue, hit escape or Alt F4. I will fix that issue in a second. There is a reason. Now we should set up our other one. This is our about button. I'm actually going to leave this till the end. This is completely optional. I only want it to be viewed by people who want to see more and don't really, and people who don't want to waste their time. I'm not really going to make them spend time on it. So our issue with once we get into the game, let me clean this out. I accidentally hit new graph. The issue with going into the game is, if you remember on our level blueprint, I told you that by default, our settings are don't show the mouse cursor and all the input goes to the game. We've changed those settings here. Now, we took control away from the game. We need to give control back to the game. So let's go ahead and do that. Inside of here where we have open level, we're just going to make a little more room. We're going to grab our player controller again. We're going to say, okay, Mr. Controller, let's set the input back to what we had it. So we're going to set it back to game mode, like that. And then we're going to go ahead and set the show mouse cursor back to false. So we're basically starting up the game, setting our input to the keyboard and mouse, setting it to the mouse. Oh my gosh. We are setting our input mode to UI only and showing the mouse cursor when we start the map. When we're leaving the map by clicking the play button, we're setting the input back to game mode and setting our show mouse cursor to off. Let's go ahead and hit play again. Now we have inputs, we hit play, and then we're in the game and our character moves around like we expect. We quit out, we can do the same thing again, and it's going to work just like we expected. That is it. That is a simple start menu. Start to finish. Everything else is optional at this point, and it all depends on how your game's set up. At this point, if you don't want to follow along, feel free to end and you're done. You have a start menu. But if you want to see maybe a way to get a multi-layered UI set up, maybe in a little about pop-up or something like that, I'm going to go ahead and show you that now. Let's go back to our designer, and I'm going to cover how this is set up. So again, I mentioned we have our canvas panel. Our canvas panel is exact positioning. It's basically our top left is one value, our bottom right is one value, and in between are different values. So we can put things exactly where we want them. The canvas panel can hold multiple children, so we can have multiple children in here. Now, if you've noticed, our canvas panel is under panels, and our vertical box right here is under panels as well. We can have panels under panels. So what we can do is we can make an about panel that will pop up or cover the entire screen and then just hide it or show it. I want to give a little bit of animation because why the hell not? You're going to wait through this. Might as well at least enjoy it a little bit. So we're going to make a little about box that slides in and slides out when you click on about. So what's the easiest way of doing this? Let's go with a vertical box, because a vertical box is going to let us stack our text. For example, if we type in our text, it's gonna flow. So we're gonna go with a vertical box. I'm gonna rename this on the left. I'm gonna name this to our about box. I'm gonna go and rename the other vertical box to our main menu buttons box, just so we at least can keep them separate. Now our about box, we're gonna go ahead and let's just move this for now. We're gonna position it where we want it later, but we're gonna put it right here for now. Let's put some stuff in it. Let's go ahead and grab some text and put it in there, and grab another line of text and another line of text. We'll go with 3 things of text. We'll set our box to auto size to content. Let's fill this out. About my awesome game. We'll give this a little bit of flair. We'll make it way smaller than I just made it. So we'll do like 52. And then, let's see, we'll grab our next text block. We'll center this. We'll grab this other one and center it. We're going to want a little bit of spacing between these 2 things. The nice thing is we have spacers, so we can find them wherever they're hiding. And they're always hiding, because I can almost never find them. It wasn't under extra, right? No. Okay. I'm looking for spacer. It's in here somewhere. Oh, primitive. Here we go. And spacer. We'll put a spacer in between the first 2 things. We'll grab the spacer and we'll tell it we want it to be, 25. And there we go. Now we have a 25 unit spacing between our title and this. And we could go with, thank you for playing my game. It was fun to create and I hope you enjoyed it. Let's go ahead and set some wrapping on here. So we're going to go ahead and tell it to auto wrap text at 500. That way at least it looks a little bit better, doesn't stick out. And this bottom one, we're going to grab another spacer. But in this case, we can copy and paste. Drag the spacer in between, and now we have a spacer and a spacer. It uses the same settings because we duplicated it. And then, thank you for playing my game. And then we'll go with Matthew. Like that. And you know what? Let's put this on the right so it looks kind of like a little signature. I don't know why I call this about, but you'd probably put more stuff in here. But yeah, this is fun. Now we need to decorate our about box a little more. I kind of can't see anything behind it. Now our about box is a vertical box. It stacks things is how it works. So if I was to put an image in here, maybe behind it, it's going to have an issue. It's going to actually stack it at the bottom or the top. Okay, so how could we easily get a background image? Well, if we had a border allows us to basically have an image and color stuff and then put something inside of it. The problem is we've already created our about box. Well, the nice thing is we can right click on any of these things and we can change things. We can replace them with another similar item or wrap them, basically parent them to something else. We can wrap our about box with a border. And there we go. We can't see anything, but that's because that's the way we've set it up. We can go in here. We can, let's see, our content is good. It's our brush color that's bad. So we can change our brush color to like black. Maybe give it a little bit of see-through. Let's go with like 0.7. You know what? Never mind. Let's go back to 1. But we now have a border that has our about box inside of it. And you can see it's a little bit easier to read. Now that we've done that, though, our border is now going to be our parent. So let's change this to our about border. That way I'm just, you know, keeping things named. This is what we care about moving because everything else is underneath it now. And if you notice, it changes our default settings. Let's give this a little bit of padding in the box now. So let's say it's going to be 40 around the corner. If I can type in the word 40. There we go. And see, it gives us a little more, you know, edge. So our about border is what we care about now. We want to animate this. We want to make it do something. So what's the easiest way to make this do something? Do we want it to like go from the bottom and pop up? or go from the side. Let's go from the bottom because I like the bottom. Since we're going to move from the bottom up and up down, we're going to anchor this to the bottom. We're going to set our anchor point to be the bottom. That's our reference point whenever we're doing something. We're going to go ahead and reset our position. And at this point, we want to make sure our alignment, our anchor is going to be centered properly. We're going to move it over 0.5 so it's anchored in the middle. And I think we're going to keep it at the top. So this way, for example, if I was to change my position, my Y, it's easy enough to tell that a negative value is a positive value isn't seen, and a negative value is seen. So let's go ahead and figure out where we want this to go. So let's go, I don't know, negative 700. Does that look good? I'm thinking that looks good. Negative 700, we'll have it pop up right there. So negative 700 is going to be where we're going to want it when it's displayed. And what, about 100 when it's not displayed, just to make sure it's out of the way. We're going to go with that. So we'll start with here at these values. This is our starting value for this. We're going to add an animation. We're going to call this show about box, or click on it. We're going to go ahead and we care about our position Y, so we're going to add a keyframe. So it's going to start off there. We're going to drag our little bar over. Let's say it pops up in 1.5 seconds. We're going to go ahead and move this up to 700 is what we determined. Negative 700, if I did it correct. There we go, negative 700. And we're going to add another keyframe. So now we have a simple animation that we can play or remove to show our about box. Okay, so we're good there. We are going to run into an issue that I will have to correct, but we'll deal with that here in a second. We need to actually be able to see this. Hopefully this is pretty simple. We have our about button. When we click on it, we're going to want to play our animation. Now, animations are weird inside of UMG. It basically adds them as a component to the UMG widget. So you get to them from here. So we grab our animation from here, and we would play. And we're going to play our animation by default. Oh, here we go. From the start. Right, like that. So we're going to play our animation from the start when we hit the about button. Let's see if that works. Well, let's fix that. If I can go back to my widget, let's grab this right here and let's determine why that was happening. Why is our default value for that 500? That's a very good question. We're not doing the animation. There we go. So when we click on the animation, this is the animation. The animation is basically going to move it to the first point and then move it to the second point. When we don't click on the animation, we actually see where this item is in real life. So this is where it actually is right now. When I hit play, that's why it showed up in the middle. We just need to match this up. Let's start it off the screen like that. Now when we play, it's off the screen. We hit about, and it comes up. Now we have an issue here. If I click anywhere in here, this background border will absorb. But if I hit play, it's going to play. So we can either expand our thingy, our border, to make it where our border covers up more. We could put in a invisible wall behind the border, so that way, for example, you can't click on anything. We could make it where it knows that the about menu is up and it doesn't allow you to click anything. There's a lot of ways to do it. I'm thinking of cheating and then just basically putting something behind here to absorb inputs. But since we're animating, it would technically animate that as well, which makes it a kind of a pain in the butt. So let's just do the Boolean way. We're gonna go with is menu open, is about open. We'll set the default to false because it's not open yet. When they click on this, we're going to set is about open to true, like this. And what we need to do before this now, because we're basically working backwards, is we check. So when they click this, we're going to get this, and we're going to if it. So if it is already open, then we are going to do nothing, is what's going to happen. True. Well, technically, if it's open and they click on it again, see, there's a couple different things here. And this is why I said it was going to take a while. I appreciate everyone who might be wanting to see this. But there's always these smaller things. Hopefully, by understanding the thought process here, it'll help you make things quicker, especially for the game jams. If we were to do this on clicked about, is it open? If it is not open, then we're going to open it and then play the animation. So technically, if we did this, then clicking on the about button isn't going to do anything. But we could still click on the other buttons, and then we still have that hover effect, which means if we hover over this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to, we can see that we can hover. So it's not quite as elegant as we would hope. Now there is an easy, cheesy way of doing this, which is how I'm actually going to do this. We are going to create a buffer in front of the screen to absorb input. It's pretty simple. We're going to, since we have our canvas panel, we're going to create another image. So find image, add it to our canvas panel. We are going to stretch it. Oh, I don't know why I hit bind. That was not the right button to hit. Image. Let's name this. We'll call this the overlay image. And we're going to stretch it. And then we need to reset its size and values. And now it's stretched over everything. It's on top of everything. We're going to change the Z order to be 100. This will appear on everything. But we're going to change its opacity to 0. Doesn't really matter. It'll still accept input. If we hit play, for example, you'll notice I can't click on anything. That thing is there absorbing all of the input before anything else hits it. But that's fine. By default, we're going to set its visibility to hidden, so it doesn't actually do that. And then it's called overlay image, so we're good. So when the player clicks on the about button, we are going to get the overlay image. We're going to set the visibility to visible, so it will start absorbing input. And then we're going to play the animation. There we go, pretty simple. Now we grab our overlay image, and what we're going to want to do is if the overlay image gets clicked on, we are going to go ahead and hide our thingy, our stupid, our about box, the thingy that I could not say. Now, one thing you'll notice here is overlay images don't have click events. They're absorbing clicks, but unfortunately, they don't have a click event we can bind into. Now, it's not that big of a deal. We do have events that are on the actual interface here. So you can see, for example, we have out on mouse button down, on movement detected, and stuff like this. If we were to go to on mouse button down, and let's say we stole this and we typed in print hello, and we save this, well, we'll get an error because this isn't finished. We'll turn this to handled. And this is basically going to say, hey, every time the mouse button goes down, go ahead and print out a string. Hello. We'll play this, we'll click, and of course, it would help if during our debug testing, we actually had the overlay image shown. So we'll hit about, and now when we click, you'll notice it's absorbing all the input and it says hello. So this is pretty simple. We go back into our main menu. We don't need that anymore for testing purposes. We'll drag this over. We will see that if the, where's the overlay image? We'll grab the overlay image. We will get the visibility of the overlay image. If it is equal to visible, therefore our overlay is being shown currently. That means we're accepting all of our input. We are absorbing it and not allowing anyone to take it. We're simply going to now hide it. So we'll grab our overlay image and we're going to move this over again. And we're going to set visibility, G-mini, criminy. And we're going to set it to hidden. And then we're going to now make our animation reverse. So grab this, show about box, and we're going to play. And we have play mode reverse. Move this over again. And in theory, we're good here. It looks good to me. This should basically work. I guess we're going to find out. We don't have this set properly yet. We kind of need to fix that. So what we need to do is about open and set that to false. And now it should work. We'll go ahead and test this. We can click our buttons. You can see the hover. We'll hit about. We can no longer click. We click, it goes away, and we can click our buttons again. We hit about, it goes away, we click again. There we go. So it's a simple little additional thing. Like I said, it would take a little bit. I didn't want to have people suffer through this. But we get a little bit of interaction. We get a little bit of playfulness with the players. We have the ability to absorb input. And this is also useful whenever you're doing anything else for other parts of the game.